Hi, I'm Jennifer Poole,
And I'm Dave Poole.
and this is our 20 days.
Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome back to our 20 days. Today is another episode of Technology Tuesday, and this is kind of an impromptu recording. I'm recording this on Saturday afternoon, February 25th, I guess it is, or 24th, sorry. And I was just reading an article in the Wall Street Journal that a real pioneering voice in the technology world passed away here, oh gosh, almost 7 weeks ago, 1st of January. A fellow by the name of Nicholas Wirth. Mr. Wirth was a leading voice in the 1960s and 70s in the development of programming languages, and who's someone who started as a programmer in the technology space. His work has a special place in my history and my heart. One of the things that Mr. Wirth was famous for was the idea that simplicity is really, really important. And if something isn't teachable, maybe it's not very good. Quite a concept, actually. And among other things, Mr. Wirth developed a programming language called Pascal, Pascal. And that was maybe not the first, probably one of the first, maybe the second or third programming language, I ever learned. And the thing I loved about Pascal is it was very compact. And what I mean by that is you had enough to do what you needed to do and not anything that you didn't need. Maybe that's something that's doesn't resonate very well. You say, well, why would you build something that has a bunch of stuff that nobody needs? The world is full of stuff with things that nobody needs. So whether it's designing a highway system or whatever the case might be. But this idea of simplicity is really, really important to me. You may or may not be familiar with the concept of something called Occam's razor, which is basically that when you're solving a problem, so whether that's you're a programmer trying to write some code, excuse me again, or if you're a mechanic trying to work on some physical problem, if you're a millwright working in a paper mill, if you're a teacher trying to solve something in a classroom, when presented a range of options to solve that problem, the simplest is probably the best. So, one mentor of mine once told me, don't create a solution that's more complex than the problem you're trying to solve, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. But we all tend to overcomplicate things, right? I mean, that's just kind of human nature to some degree. But Pascal was one of those languages that Mr. Wirth wrote that was, he was in another program doing some work on a different programming language, and after a couple of years' work, ended up leaving because they weren't getting anything done. So, his point of view is, again, we're working on stuff that doesn't matter. So, within 6 months after that, in 1970, he published Pascal. He's a Swiss national who is a real titan in the legions of people who were in the early days of technology. So if you think about it, in the late 60s, early 70s, we were still talking about computers that took up small rooms or even large rooms. The term bug comes from literally a moth being attracted to and damaging a vacuum tube in something and causing the computer to error out and not work properly. So one of the foundational books in computer science, as it were, which wasn't even probably called computer science then, was something called Algorithms plus Data Structures equals Programs. So if you think about it, algorithms are basically logic flows, go from point A to point B to point C, plus all this data you're working with and how it's structured and how you access it equals a program. And that book was, again, so teachable. It really resonated with me as a 17, 18, 19-year-old learning my first programming languages. I mean, I'm young enough that I kind of grew up in the early days of the personal computer. So whether it was an IBM PC or an Apple II or an Apple Macintosh or the early versions of Microsoft Windows were all things that occurred kind of in my mid-teens to early 20s, and really got me excited about what sort of impacts this type of technology could have. But Mr. Worth was also known for disdaining bureaucracy. So in one of his later positions in life, one of his PhD candidates approached him wanting to buy a new mouse. And as is always the case, it seems, in corporate America or educational America in this particular case, the paperwork to fill out to get a $10 mouse was not worth the effort. So he reached into his billfold, handed the student $10 and says, have at it. So I wish we had more people in the world that were more dedicated problem solvers than that. So that's the impromptu version of today's Technology Tuesday episode for this week for our 20 days. So again, one of those folks that unknowingly probably influenced a number of people, including myself. So check him as being on the list of foundational people. You hear about Bill Gates, you hear about Steve Jobs, you hear about Steve Wozniak, Alan Kay, all of these early superstars, if you will, of the technology revolution that started in the early 60s with the ENIAC computer and that type of thing. But people like Nicholas Worth were probably more foundationally relevant than many of the names I just mentioned. So Nicholas, here's to you. Thanks for A, helping the industry, and B, inspiring a young man like myself when you did to take this career further. Thanks for joining us today on Our 20 Days. Be sure to subscribe or like our website at our20days.com to make sure you receive all updates for new episodes. And again, thanks for joining us at Our 20 Days.